casserole. Welcome in.
You're listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendent and Leadership Podcast, a proud member of the Podcasserole Network. Hello, Jamie.
Hey, Peter. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. Yeah, everything's going all right. So we have a guest today.
Yes.
This is a return guest, a good friend of the podcast, a good friend to me, a supporter of my book. I'm so glad that he was willing to give us a nice endorsement. And it's Doug Reeves. I shouldn't have buried his name, but Doug Reeves is our guest. I know what our guest was.
Can you bury Doug Reeves' name on an Ed podcast?
Nope, impossible. Yeah, so well known, so well respected. And has a new book around AI. And so that's pretty exciting. And so we spent some time talking about it. We didn't do an after-action review this week because it really was just a kind of a special opportunity to sit down with somebody, talk with them about their work and their book. And they're constantly thinking about how, in this case, AI impacts schools. And it's not a technical book. It's really a practical book for all of us to kind of think about this work in a really meaningful way. But I'm curious about whether you want to talk a little bit about the interview now or jump into it, and then we'll talk a little bit about it afterwards.
I think we should jump in, but the one comment I'll make, and everybody on the podcast who listens probably now knows that Jamie can't not just jump in. It's difficult to just jump in. He always has something to say, but in this case, I will make it short. The big aha was this. Of course, Doug Reeves has a book about AI. If there's anybody that is figuring out how to get a book about AI out quickly, it's Doug Reeves. What I appreciated about it was the practical it felt like two educators listening to the two of you felt like two educators talking about their concerns and worries about AI while also seeing the possibilities and what does that mean and what do I do and all of that kind of like stuff that I think is actually happening right now in the hallways of schools as I go and I'm in schools. People are talking about having the same conversation the two of you are having today. So it'll be fun to see how people connect to it and say, oh yeah, we talked about that already.
Good. Then I hope it'll resonate for folks. So before we jump in, we do have a sponsor each week. And one of the things I wanted to think about when it comes to Doug Reeves is this idea, and you'll hear it in the interview, or in our conversation, is really about that administrators should spend less time on paperwork and more time in classrooms and how AI can help you do that. And so I think the same thing about IXL. It makes that possible too. It takes the load off of your teachers with that research-proven platform, and it automatically adapts to learners. And so if you want to focus on the human side of leadership, do it. Let IXL handle the data. Visit IXL.com/imperfect today to bring the magic to your school. How about that? Magic.
Nice.
Magic, yeah. All right.
It's a magical illusion.
You're listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast. I'm Peter Stiefel.
And I'm Jamie Almanson.
We will see you on the other side. Today on An Imperfect Leader, Dr. Douglas Reeves is my guest. Dr. Reeves is the author of more than 40 books and more than 100 articles on leadership and education, and he has twice been named to the Harvard University Distinguished Author Series. He was named the Brock International Laureate for his contributions to education. I am thrilled to welcome you back. Welcome back to An Imperfect Leader, Douglas Reeves.
Thanks so much, Peter. It is a joy to be with you and a particular joy to listen to the podcast. I listen to it every week and I always learn something and I really appreciate it.
That means so much to hear. I really appreciate that. And it's really nice to see you again. I do want to ask, how are you? We email back and forth from time to time, but I'm curious how you've been.
I'm good. I've been working hard and busy writing. Just finished a book that was out this week on artificial intelligence in schools, and I'm unsuited to retirement, so I still have
you have failed to retirement.
left to write and read and listen.
Well, you have things to say, and we certainly want to hear them. So I'm glad that you're doing it. I'm curious. So I am grateful that you listen to our podcast each week. Are there any others that you listen to regularly that you just never miss?
Yeah, I like Adam Grant at the University of Pennsylvania. He has a couple of podcasts, but the one I really appreciate is called Think Again, something that we should always be willing to do. And that is to rethink what we thought we knew for sure a few years ago. And now we know it's not true. So Adam is great. I love listening to another colleague at the University of Pennsylvania. No stupid questions. So I listen to a lot of them.
I love that.
I never waste time. I'm always, if I'm standing in line at an airport or in a grocery store, I always learn something.
That's fantastic. Well, Adam Grant certainly makes me think of Margaret Wheatley's work around sort of thinking and rethinking about those things that you believe to be indisputable. And so that's great. I used to listen to, there's a British comedian named David Baddiel. He had a podcast called it's David Baddiel Tries to Understand. And I loved it because he channeled so many of the ways that I think about things, but also his podcast was about like, he would try to understand like, how does hacking work, or how does Bitcoin work, or how does the fashion industry work? And so he'd bring on experts, and then he would try to repeat back what he thought he understood. And they would say, no, you're completely wrong. But there's a new podcast by, or at least a new to me, Hassan Minhaj. He is a comedian also. And this past week had Wycliffe Jean on, and they were talking about AI. So this is my long way of getting to your book, because I was like, oh, I mean, he says, don't be afraid of AI. I embrace it all. And it was sort of, I'd love to hear Adam Grant's kind of take on this, because it was sort of going what I believe to be true in terms of how we leverage and have a healthy dose of fear of AI. At least I do. And Wycliffe was like, no, just embrace it totally. And so, since the last time we spoke, you wrote a book, Education and the Ethics of AI, Enduring Values in a Changing World. So pretty timely at a crucial time. And I wonder if you'd take a little time and tell us about the book.
Sure, I'd be happy to. First of all, I think we need to acknowledge that the kids are a mile ahead of us on this. The evidence says that 60% of teachers think it's a cheating machine and don't like it. Administrators are divided, but 100% of the kids are using it. So let's get real about this. I'm old enough to remember when people thought that calculators were going to ruin math education. and the truth is that AI is here. So what I tried to say in this book is it's not as good as its advocates think it is. It's not as bad as its critics think that it will be. What our job as teachers and administrators is to figure out, how do we use it constructively? And I try to provide some gentle guidance on how to use it appropriately.
So you talk a little bit about, particularly in the book, about the importance of balancing AI-supported work with the things that you really need to stay, that need to stay human. And I guess what I mean by that is like these big promises, as you said, there are these big promises of what they say it can do. And so it's not everything it can do, nor is it as worrisome as potentially as one might think it is. And so, it can take administrative work off of our plates. It can give us some time back. And so if leaders do get that time back, where would you most want them to sort of reinvest that time to strengthen their culture, their relationships, all the things that AI just can't replace?
Exactly. Well, that's such a thoughtful insight, Peter, because what AI cannot do is be in classrooms and observing teachers. We need our administrators to be in classrooms and looking at things like student engagement, looking at what teachers are doing well and confirming that and what they need to work on. So if I could ask for one thing from our school administrators, spend less time writing these dumb 95-point school plans and more time in classrooms with students. And by the way, whenever I do observations, I'm never the suit in the back of the room. Right. I sit next to a student and ask really sophisticated questions like, what are we doing? What comes next? If every administrator would do that, I think we would get so much more out of our classroom observations, plus building relationships between administrators and students.
It's so interesting you mentioned that. This past week, talked with a gentleman. He had been in a number of international schools. Robert Landau is his name. And he talked about the importance of shadowing a kid the entire day, for one entire day. Not just being in the classroom sitting next to them, but really take that time. And I think I mentioned to you that I will be moving to Cartagena, Colombia in July. I'm going to jump back into the administration role of being a principal. And a big part of that is, like you, I'm doing a terrible job of retiring. I've got too much energy and excitement, and I've learned so much from you and others that I really sort of want to see what that might look like in the day-to-day practice. And I've been rethinking how I might do observations differently than I did when I was a superintendent, and then differently, certainly, from when I was a principal. And that sitting with a child as opposed to being that suit in the back. And so I'm really excited about that. This idea of maybe spending an entire day with a child intrigues me. I don't know if that's something that you've noticed. I mean, I certainly recommend to people your science fair perspective on how to really speak about what you've learned as a community. So any continued guidance, I would love.
We probably have a mutual friend in the late Grant Wiggins. His daughter, Alexis Wiggins, wrote this viral blog post that is precisely as you said. She shadowed a student, stayed with them, ate where they ate, read what they read, took the tests that they took. And what Alexis said so thoughtfully is the life of students, and this was a very high-performing school, the life of students is crashingly boring. And she wrote very persuasively that we need to do a better job of making their lives more engaged and more exciting, because right now it's all scripted and all they want to do is get the heck out of there.
They look for those unstructured times to actually be themselves and engage in, which is why I do applaud those schools that really have moved towards going phone free and to reassert the value of that human connection.
I want to recognize John Haidt at New York University, who wrote the book, The Anxious Generation.
Sure.
Who really made the pervasive case for going phone free. And John is not only a great scholar, but somebody who's really influenced education in the last couple of years.
Yeah, a lot of the research that I know that John highlighted comes from also the San Diego State University, Jean Twenge's work. And so the two of them together are just a powerful force around, particularly when Jonathan talks about the 2010 sort of being that delineation line when that's the moment we lost our kids. And unfortunately, it was around the same time that we were sort of hearing, get those phones into schools, let them leverage their phones and technology for education, without us really understanding what the social media companies were doing at that same time. So I'm really grateful for his work as well. I do have a friend who's actually in the tech industry, and he said something to me recently he said, well, Peter, AI can't care. Like, it doesn't care, doesn't know how to show compassion. And he said, it can replace what used to take 2 weeks to code in a matter of seconds, but it just can't care. And so I thought about that. In your book, in chapter 3, you dive into the emotional and cognitive context of AI in schools. And so how does one wrestle with the reality that AI can't truly understand a teacher's growth, as you mentioned, or a student's very personal path towards success? So how do you wrestle with that reality? And I guess, what advice do you provide to schools as they're trying to really balance this emerging technology, as you noted, that kids are using every day, while also trying to, engage in place-based, project-based, sort of the work that actually gets to that deeper learning?
Well, first of all, I think we need to acknowledge that some of the things that teachers and administrators do have not changed in 50 years. Teachers are still writing out lesson plans, some of which have to be turned in every Monday. And a lot of lesson plans can be done by AI, and I illustrate that in the book. Yeah. Same is true with agendas for administrator meetings. Administrators spend way too much time writing out agendas when that can be done in a matter of seconds. In fact, in an illustration that I personally observed, a large number of our schools are serving multilingual districts. So I worked in a school that had students who were speaking not only English, but Spanish, Arapaho, and Shoshone. And the principal was spending hours writing these letters to parents in a matter of seconds. Here comes the letter in Arapaho, Shoshone, Spanish, and English to parents. That's the sort of thing that AI can do. And that allows the principal to get out from behind the desk and spend time with kids. The same is true of central office administrators. So much time is spent on writing agendas and lesson plans and that sort of thing that can be better spent with getting people out from behind their desks and with kids. So that's one of my real educational heroes. John Simpson sadly passed away, was the superintendent of Norfolk Public Schools, which won the Broad Award for the best urban superintendent in the country. And Dr. Simpson would go through the central office saying, what are you doing here? You should be in schools. You should be with kids. And I really respected that. And I think that's what most of us should be doing.
This is a big week for me talking to folks. This happened to be just a lot of recordings this week. And so I spoke with another superintendent this week who she leads by saying to central office, we will be in classrooms throughout the week, including everybody, your CFO, your chief operating officer. Particularly, this was a district that had a snow day. They all report to buildings to be able to support so that the principal can really attend to children. And I just was so pleased by that, just very simple, that simple act, simple decision that I think has a profound ripple effect throughout the entire district, that they don't sit in this sort of central spot, but rather find their way into buildings to see, like, the mission's only possible if they understand what they're trying to accomplish, with children.
Peter, you're making me smile so broadly because in Greenfield, Wisconsin, the superintendent is not only there on opening day, as is all the central office staff, but when a kindergartner was having a breakdown, she's literally on the floor with the kindergartner and helping to calm the whole situation down. And when you see the superintendent of schools on the floor with the kindergartner having a breakdown, that tells you what the instructional priorities are.
Yeah, and I think sometimes they'll get criticized to say, that's not your job. You're the civic leader of that district. And I think it's a yes and. I think if you're going to have your teachers really believe in the vision you've cast and they see you on their floor with their kid,
yes,
there's nothing beats that. And not that it's performative. You're doing it because you truly care about that child and their care. Just that happens to be the positive consequence of that action is everybody says, I work for a superintendent who is visible, who is present, and is active. And
what great modeling for teachers as well. We're having in this country a huge turnover in the teaching profession, and a lot of them have not seen modeled what great student engagement is. And this superintendent was able to show that. I think sometimes what I worry about is that we talk a good game about instructional leadership, but we don't describe it very well. We certainly don't model it very well. Yeah. So I really appreciated what her modeling and leadership looked like.
Our guest today is Dr. Douglas Reeves, the author of more than 40 books on leadership and education, including his newest one, Education and the Ethics of AI, Enduring Values in a Changing World. And in the leadership model that I use to advise others, there is a dimension, it's nested patterns. It really speaks to how do we want to be together? And inside that dimension, there are two terms, empathy and compassion. And when it comes to policies and guidelines for ethical AI use, I'm kind of curious, how should schools think about being very explicit about what AI shouldn't do? You noted, for instance, that kids are using it and that some teachers, their first response has been, well, this is a violation of our student conduct code by using AI. And so I'm kind of curious, just would you talk a little bit about those, like the ethical AI use? How should schools think about that?
Sure. I think we need to be very practical because teachers are frustrated and parents are frustrated too. Parents are afraid that if their kids use AI, they'll be accused of plagiarism that'll perhaps jeopardize their high school grades and college applications. So I try to get really explicit. I've got 3 ideas to consider. Number 1 is require oral defense. In other words, if you got 30 kids in the classroom, I can't have 30 different kids providing an oral defense, but I can randomly choose 3 of them to defend orally what they wrote. And if they can't, that's a suggestion that maybe they're not the one who wrote the paper. So that's number 1. Number 2, what I want students to do is to be able to show that they are better than AI. Specifically, what I ask them to do is to say, look, I'm not fooling anybody. Here's the AI version. And then here's how I edited, fact-checked, and improved it. And King has a great line that says to write is human, to edit divine. Every writer, and I'm one of them, says, writing is not the thing. It's editing and revision. That's what really makes for a book or makes for a paper.
So before you get to number 3, I want to just note, that's certainly where I fall, particularly for students whose first language is not English. So they show what their first product looked like, how AI may have helped them with the mechanics of language so that as they then actually meet with their teacher to go over their writing, that it's less about correcting the mechanics and more about their message and their voice and what is their argument and really developing them as writers instead of just being stuck in punctuation and those types of things.
Exactly. And what I want those students to know is that the real value that they add as authors is how they edited, fact-checked, and improved it, not the first draft. Now,
right.
There's legitimate difference of opinion among people who have written about this, but I think what we need our students to be able to do is to fact-check, edit, and revise, and not just do a first draft and turn it in. The other thing, it's all about respect for teacher feedback. Teachers are very frustrated that they work really hard grading papers and nobody pays any attention to it. When you have this emphasis on editing and revision, that says we care about editing and revision, not just the first draft. And there may be a second and a third and a fourth draft too, by the way. And finally, I think what we need to do is have a full disclosure. The real issue for AI, and for that matter, the same would apply to parent help on homework.
Well, that's another thing. It's sort of like levels the playing field a little bit because I know my child can rely on 2 college-educated parents to help him should he need the help. And I think about a child whose parents may be working 2 or 3 jobs that want to be helpful, and their help is not, they're just not present in the same way. And so I'm pretty okay with AI being a sort of a thought partner in helping them think about that. And I'll endeavor not to keep interrupting you because I know you want to get to the third issue.
I would just suggest three little boxes at the top of every assignment. Say, I did this entirely on my own. Box one, I did this with a little help from AI, or AI wrote this and I fact checked it. But I just want honesty and full disclosure. That to me is the ethical issue that we need to address. And, I'm sure you've read all these articles about college kids who have, bowled their way through college without any sort of fact checking. And I think we need to stop that. We need to have honest and full and open disclosure.
I like that. The other piece that I just want to raise, because I recently heard Emily Oster give a talk and she gave a staggering percentage, and I can't bring it up at the moment, so I don't want to give a false percentage, but it was pretty, I just remember my eyes just went wide open. The percentage of students who were using AI as almost like a therapist or as their secret keeper, and so when I think about the full range of roles that schools play, apart from just the academic piece that we're thinking about when it comes to AI, is, Claude and ChatGPT will always tell you that you're brilliant and that you're bringing them, right? So you feel so affirmed. I'm worried about teenagers where they say, am I wrong in thinking this? And of course, it will never tell you you're wrong. So it's no, of course you should be thinking these maybe some really dangerous. And we want children to be able to access the humans in their lives, a trusted person. And my worry is that their trusted person is not even a person, is artificial.
Well, you're exactly right. And some of these are programmed to deliver nothing more than affirming thoughts. And what we need our students to be able to do is to think critically. And you can only learn to think critically if you're challenged. And AI does not do that. The other thing, to go off on a slight tangent, is that a common charge about AI is that it is racist. And what I try to say in the book is AI is not racist. It's just to reflect, it's a bottom feeder. AI just scoops up from the internet all the things that we have put in there for the last 50 years. And here's the best example, and then I'll stop with this. You ask, please provide a picture of professionals, doctors, lawyers, accountants, professors, and school superintendents. And what do you think comes up? Pale male. Because that's the pictures that are there at the bottom of the internet. If we really want our students to think critically, they've got to be able to identify the error in that and then challenge it.
I want to return to something we were talking about in terms of teacher evaluation and feedback. So we want, AI can allow for us to now do some of the administrative tasks that allow us to get into classrooms. I have been approached by an ed tech firm that says, we'd like you to help us think through allowing evaluators to go into a teacher's classroom, write down what they're observing, and then feed it into, let's say, the Danielson model, and then it'll spit out where that teacher falls in terms of evaluation. And I have real concerns. I think about, Kim Marshall, who lives not too far from where you are in the Boston area, who's been really mindful of teacher evaluation and feedback. How can we resist? Like, I want to use AI for the administrative tasks, like you mentioned, the newsletter, the agendas, those types of things. And I have real reservations about using it in a teacher evaluation model. I'm not asking you to plant a flag. I'm curious about just your thoughts about what should we be thinking about, because I think the most powerful piece is the conversation with a teacher about, what were you hoping to achieve and what would you do differently? Those sort of two fundamental questions.
Peter, you are exactly right. I cannot sufficiently express how much I disagree with these electronic models of providing automated texts and automated emails to teachers. And there's two issues. Number one, the gap between when the observation occurs and when the feedback happens is filled with self-loathing and doubt. Oh my God.
Yes, always, right?
Did she not like what she said? Why is she avoiding me? When my rule is the sun doesn't set. If I do an observation, the sun doesn't set without face-to-face, person-to-person, next passing period, next lunch, next whatever it is, same day feedback. And so that's number one. It's a relationship business, and we cannot pass that off to any electronic device. The second thing is, and I learned this from a colleague of mine who wrote this wonderful article called What I Wish My Principal Knew. And she said, so the principal comes in, sit in the back of the room, observing the class. Kid gets up, walks out. First thing, student left class without permission. And she said, what I wish my principal knew is this kid is 5th grade classroom. The kid had a UTI, urinary tract infection. Had to go to the bathroom a lot. In 5th grade, there's lots of, giggles and titters about that. And so she just had this system. Hey, gotta go, okay to go. No interruption in the lesson plan, no interruption in learning. Just keep going. That teacher should have been praised for compassion and creativity and thoughtfulness rather than criticized. So what I've learned to do is I don't start with what I saw. I say, hey, you knew more than I did. What did you see in this observation? What did you see in the classroom? And if every observer or supervisor or principal would just start with that, what did you see? I think we'd have less contentious interactions with our teachers and recognize that they have a vision that's much broader than the observer has.
Yeah, I totally agree. In fact, they'll mention things that you didn't even notice and so it really deepens the conversation and provides the evaluator with a real sense of this person knows their kids, knows that what they did well and where they want to continue to learn, and then shouldn't rely on the evaluator who's in there not very often, probably, to be considered sort of the authority on it's not a value. It shouldn't be a value statement. It's all about.
And thank you for mentioning Kim Marshall's book, because Kim's fundamental case is, in some districts, an administrator might only be in the classroom twice a year because of union regulations. Kim says it ought to be twice a week. And
agree. And
if you arrange your schedule appropriately, administrators can be in there a lot more. And back to AI, if AI is managing our calendar, we can spend way more time in the classroom, way less time in the office.
Oh, I love that. I hadn't thought about asking you to create for me. Here, you have access to my calendar for the week. I want you to find, and here are the people I've uploaded my chart of who I've actually seen in the last week. So now create this week's evaluations, because sometimes we are blinded by, I'm going to go into the classroom where I know exciting things are happening and avoid the one that may not want to see me.
By the way, just to plug, Kim's 3rd edition of Rethinking Teacher Supervision and Evaluation is out now. And I just think it's a brilliant book and a real contribution to the literature.
Let's also plug yours for a moment. So your newest book, Education and the Ethics of AI, Enduring Values in a Changing World. As we close our conversation today, what is one hope you have for administrators as they really are trying to navigate this very new world? How can the book help them do that?
So I have a couple of hopes. Number one, I want them to include parents in the conversation. A lot of parents are very apprehensive about AI, and I need to make sure that they feel heard and respected, that we're not trying to brainwash their kids. We're not trying to turn them into cheating machines. We're trying to help them be prepared. And chances are, as I said before, they're already using it. So let's get real about this and make sure that we also respect the doubts that teachers have. I've been in conversations with teachers who say, I'm not going to use it because I think it's a cheating machine. And we need to respect their doubts, but also say, here's how you can use it ethically and appropriately. That's been the case that I make in the book. There's a lot of books published on AI these days. Some of them are way, way too complicated, and I think they just bury people in technology. My book is certainly not technologically adept. I've just tried to say, here are practical things that teachers and parents can use to use AI ethically and appropriately. That's all I'm trying to say. It's not fancy. It's just the best I can do.
Well, over my almost 30 years in education, and every time I pick up something you've written, you are always talking about honoring the voices, whether it be students, teachers, parents, administrators. And by listening, usually we find ourselves making more predictably successful decisions. So today, our guest was Dr. Douglas Reeves. I'm so grateful you came back and gave me some time today. And really, it's so nice to see you.
My great pleasure. And good luck in your next assignment. You're going to be in South America.
That's right. Come visit.
Yes, it sounds lovely.
I think before we got on, you said it was 8 degrees or below where you are. It will be 98 degrees where I am. So, just come visit.
It's quite cold in Boston. I just came back from South Asia, and I've done a lot of work in Singapore and other places in South Asia. So it'll be an exciting experience for you. And international schools are such a wonderful melting pot to see all the different cultures coming together.
Thanks again, Doug. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Enjoy.
And we're back. Peter,
was good. It's good to see him. Good to spend time with him.
I think it's fun. It was, like I said, I really enjoyed sort of two educators talking about AI from the place in which they both approach it. And yeah, I love that part about it. Can I share the one idea that really resonated with me?
Yeah.
That you both, so you both said, you both just sort of resonated with the idea of AI cannot replicate empathy, care, or human relationships. And the idea that AI cannot care. That's what it can't do.
It can't care.
And no, this really is interesting to me because I don't want to make a connection here. I was listening to a more recent episode of The Daily, the podcast, about AI and its impact on engineers, on coding, and how different companies are doing different things. Like your Microsofts and your Googles, it's having a smaller impact, big impact for them, but it's small because the company's so large. But then you've got these small startups of only a few people, and AI has a massive impact because they're using it way more often. One of the ahas that came from the big companies, but other coders as well, is it has freed up time and helped them with some of the communication that they do on a daily basis with other people in the company that the coders have seen. This is just interviewing maybe 75 coders. Coders have gotten better at communication with people.
Oh, that's interesting. It made me think of my friend Ian is writing a book right now about AI. And one of his conclusions as a programmer himself is, in fact, that AI has gotten so good to use it for coding that it should now make it easier for programmers, as I understand his book, to be able to make more attractive and engaging and understandable platforms. Because if you look at when people make things, they're coding and they don't make it easy and it's clunky. And now AI can do it so much faster and easier that it's going to require the human to be human and think about the aesthetic and the accessibility and all those types of things. And so Doug talked about these limitations of AI in terms of compassion and inherent bias when he's like, it's a bottom feeder. That to me, my brain was like, whoa, when he said that. And I hadn't even really put it in. His quote was something like, AI just scoops up from the internet. It like all the things that we put in there for the last 50 years. And I went, yes, that's how it's made meaning.
What I did say, when he said that, and he goes, they asked it to look for leaders, basically. Who are the doctors, lawyers, superintendents, whatever, and white men came up. And I'm like, if we talk to Dr. Rachel White, she probably would concur. So that, though, as it relates to
that's the only thing in the bucket.
The feeding of the bottom replicates the actual system that it is. And so we don't have a lot of other data to feed it that would cause it to come up with other images, which is a testament to us, not to just the internet and the concept of it. But I really loved
it. Endorses this compelling purpose of why we want to really, and I say diversify in the purest sense of, we're better when you look around and it isn't just the same.
So I really liked the idea that, and this is the way I experience it. I mean, I'm experiencing it that my role as a coach and someone who supports human-centered leadership, that supports people to be better at working with people, isn't necessarily I'm not being impacted by AI in that way. Rather, I tend to be in positions where people are like, I used AI to come up with these questions, but they didn't land right.
Because I read them exactly as they were spit out to me. Yeah, that's so interesting. That makes me think of his being Doug's about AI and editing and fact-checking and improving upon what it might suggest as a first draft.
This is where, I'll speak honestly, this is where I use AI. Like I use AI, I'll put something together and then I'll use AI to go back through and it'll spit out another version of it. And I'll go, I don't like the way that's written. Can we edit this paragraph? Or I didn't think to move that paragraph there. It does things that other editor people have done for me before, but it does them quicker. I can upload it without having to say, hey, Peter, do you have an hour to talk to me about this article that I'm trying to write? So those things I think are really helpful. Is it the final draft? No, I don't know. It doesn't work that way for me. I definitely see it as a tool, not the thing, which led to, he made that comment about it, teachers being worried. What did they say? He said, everybody's worried it's a cheating machine. Superintendents don't know what to do about it, but kids are using it 100%. And that to me was so telling because just feels, once again, students are jumping in to something new, both feet ready to go. And all of our, as educators are like, wait, hold on. We're not sure. No hats. Nobody can wear hats ever at school. No hats. And then maybe that's silly. That turned out to not be so right. Or whatever it is.
Just as an aside, I can remember when they're like, girls can wear hats because that's fashion. And boys were like, what on earth? They're like, all right, fine, no hats. No hats for anyone.
Banning
How about
whatever
hats?
it is that we decide to ban, yet include, like, it's all of that. And oftentimes it's students at the forefront who are doing something new, trying something out, and none of the adults are ready. We're all just afraid of whenever.
Yeah. And so he encourages us to be better than AI, doesn't he? He said something along those lines.
Yeah, he said. Actually, I liked the quote. Basically, he said this was in like rethinking how we use AI in academics. He said, basically, have the students show that they're better than AI. What are the ways in which they're going to show in their writing that they're writing, here's what AI did, here's how I'm thinking about it, and I'm using it as a play to bounce off of. And I'm showing you why my thinking is better than what that came up with. I particularly liked, this is obviously for you and I who both love to talk, the oral defense model. I was like, oh, I would do that in a heartbeat. That if you say AI is fully on, no problem, you can use it whenever you want, but you have to be ready to defend your argument, your essay, your thinking, your whatever, orally, when you come to class, just sounds amazing to me. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is also, but obviously with a bias, because oral presentation is not hard for me.
So this is the last thing I want to say before we wrap up for today is, as a superintendent, there's always this push for really large-scale plans. Strategic plans. And I'm all about getting focused on what are the 3 things you're going to be focused on, and then do them. And if you're going to add something else, then what are you taking away? And then monitor cycles of inquiry, getting better, learning, and going, right? Many times this season, in season 4, I feel like it's like the formative assessment theme of this year, because you have said it a number of times and reminded me of the value of checking in, seeing how we're doing, and then adjusting and moving forward. And so when he says that, look, if you're like allowing educators to focus on, it's more important that we build relationships and we are present in classrooms than like all this other nonsense. So if you want to let AI like leverage it, handle the administrative tasks. But he said, but if I could ask for one thing from our school administrators, spend less time writing these dumb 95-point school plans and more time in classrooms with students. And I was like, amen. And to hear someone of Douglas Reeves' stature and importance in our field, I just hope we all listen, because we've gotten so stuck on making these just wildly long and complicated and complex plans that really amount to nothing because of the churn that goes on with leadership. And so let's just do the right things, small, do it right, move forward.
I'm right there with you. I think if we can do the things that we think will make the biggest impact on students, positive impact on students, and just do those 3 things. I love the idea of, if you're going to do something else, then what are you taking off? As opposed to, we're going to do something else and this is already sort of similar to what you're already doing, so it won't feel that different. Like, actually, no, it feels very different. It's a completely different thing. Yeah.
Well, there it is. Please check out Doug Reeves' book, Education, the Ethics of AI, Enduring Values in a Changing World. It really is a pretty timely book at a crucial time. Yeah. Jamie, I will see you next week.
See you next week.
You've been listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendent and Leadership Podcast. Bye.
See ya.
Music for An Imperfect Leader was written and arranged by Ian Varley. Sam Falbo created our artwork, a wood print inspired Daruma doll butterfly. Remember, imperfect leadership is not a scarlet letter. It's a badge of honor. It recognizes that serving as a lead learner is about being a vulnerable leader, an empathetic leader, a compassionate leader. We are proud to be imperfect leaders, so join us next time for another episode of An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendent and Leadership Podcast. Hey, district leaders, I know you already know this. In schools worldwide, cell phones are posing real challenges on student engagement and mental well-being, and I want you to meet Yonder, a proud sponsor of An Imperfect Leader. And let me share this story from a visit I made to some schools in Silicon Valley. I asked some kids what they liked about Yonder, and after some funny looks, they shared that actually, with Yonder, teachers don't have to battle with them over phones anymore. In fact, one kid said to me he didn't have to worry anymore about his parents texting him in class. And the kid next to him sort of shoved him and goes, "Texting? My mom used to FaceTime me in class." I want to introduce you to a support system that increases teaching and learning. I want you to discover why 1 million students choose Yonder daily. Minimize distractions, maximize learning potential. To learn more, go to overyonder.com. YONDR. So I want to talk a minute about the Mosaic Project. It is one of our favorite organizations and has over 25 years of experience empowering students to really celebrate differences, communicate assertively, and resolve conflict peacefully at their outdoor school. I happen to have experience being part of the Mosaic Project, and so I can absolutely tell you it's an amazing organization. Their innovative SEL curriculum is now available to our Imperfect Leader audience. And so you can get a 10% discount through their new documentary film-based Mosaic Classroom Project. So just let the people know during your onboarding process to receive that 10% discount is to just mention An Imperfect Leader. Learn more about the Mosaic Project at mosaicproject.org.
When leaders think in systems, they think differently. They see the big picture, making decisions that create coherence and strengthen communication across their teams. They build adaptability, flexibility, and engagement. Every day, school leaders face complex challenges, from student engagement to staff alignment. What if your team could see those challenges as part of a bigger picture? That's what happens when you think in systems. It's how leaders turn complexity into connection and challenges into opportunities for growth. At the Waters Center for Systems Thinking, we help educators and organizations build this capacity, developing the habits and tools that turn vision into action. Think differently, think in systems. Sign up for our webinars, free resources, or a consultation by visiting our website, which you can find in the show notes.